Hello there. I'm so glad you've decided to join me for this journey today. Have you ever felt like your mind is a roommate that just won't stop talking? You're trying to fall asleep, or maybe you're trying to enjoy a quiet walk, but there's this constant stream of commentary, worry, and judgment running through your head. Most of us live our entire lives as prisoners to that internal chatter, never realizing that we are actually something much deeper than the thoughts we think. Today, we are diving into a book that has profoundly changed the way millions of people perceive their own existence. Its main purpose is remarkably simple, yet incredibly difficult for the modern mind to grasp. It's about finding a way out of psychological suffering by reclaiming your life from the grip of the mind. The core message is that the only time you ever truly have is this very moment, the now. We're going to explore how most of our pain isn't caused by our circumstances, but by our resistance to what is happening right here and right now. Throughout this summary, we'll look at a few high-level ideas that serve as the foundation for this teaching. First, we will look at the concept of disidentification, the idea that you are not your thoughts, but the silent observer behind them. Second, we will discuss the pain body, which is that heavy emotional baggage we all carry and how it feeds on our unconsciousness. Finally, we'll touch on the transformative power of surrender, which isn't about giving up, but about accepting the present moment without any mental labels or resistance. The author, Eckhart Tolle, isn't presenting a new religion or a complex philosophy. Instead, he's offering a practical guide to spiritual awakening that is rooted in the immediate experience of being alive. He suggests that if we can just learn to step out of the constant flow of past and future, we can access a deep sense of peace that is always available to us, right underneath the surface of our busy lives. It's about moving from a state of doing and thinking into a state of being. As we get ready to peel back the layers of the mind and explore what it means to truly be present, I hope you find these insights as grounding and transformative as so many others have. If you find value in these ideas and want to keep exploring deep insights with me, please remember to like this audio, share it with someone who might need a moment of peace, and subscribe so you don't miss our future journeys together. Main summary: the journey into presence. To begin understanding the depth of this work, we have to start with the most fundamental realization a human being can have, the realization that you are not your mind. For most of us, this sounds strange. We think, of course I am my mind. My thoughts are my identity. But the book argues that this is the primary source of all human suffering. Your mind is a tool, a brilliant and powerful instrument for solving tasks, planning, and communicating. However, the problem arises when the tool starts to run the master. When you cannot stop thinking, you aren't using your mind is using you. Think about the nature of your thoughts. They are almost always about the past or the future. You are either reliving a memory, ruminating on a mistake, or you are projecting yourself into the future, worrying about what might happen or planning your next big success. In both cases, you are ignoring the only thing that is actually real, the present moment. The now is the only place where life happens. Everything else is just a mental construct. By identifying so strongly with these thoughts, we create a false self or an ego. This ego is incredibly fragile because it depends on the past for its identity and the future for its fulfillment. Because the ego is always afraid of being nothing, it keeps you in a state of constant striving and anxiety. The moment you realize that you are the one listening to the voice in your head, a gap of consciousness opens up. In that gap, you are no longer a slave to your thoughts, you are the silent witness. This is the beginning of freedom. Now we move to the next point, which explores the profound and often misunderstood concept of time and why it is the greatest obstacle to our happiness. In this teaching, a clear distinction is made between clock time and psychological time. Clock time is necessary for the practicalities of life, making an appointment, learning from the past to avoid a mistake, or setting a goal for the future. It is a functional tool. However, the trouble starts when clock time turns into psychological time. This happens when you allow your mind to dwell on the past or the future to the point where the present moment is seen only as a means to an end, or even worse, as an enemy. Psychological time is the obsession with the then at the expense of the now. If you are always looking toward the future for some sense of salvation or completion, you are essentially saying that this moment isn't good enough. You think, I'll be happy when I get that job, or I'll be at peace when I finally finish this project. But the future never actually arrives as the future. When it gets here, it is just another now. If you haven't learned how to be present in the current moment, you won't be able to be present in the future one either, no matter how much you achieve. The book explains that all negativity is caused by an accumulation of psychological time and a denial of the present. Unease, anxiety, tension, stress, and worry, all forms of fear, are caused by too much future and not enough presence. Guilt, regret, resentment, grievances, sadness, and bitterness are caused by too much past and not enough presence. When you focus your full attention on the now, these problems often dissolve because they require time to survive. Without the past or the future, there is only the immediate reality of what is. For example, if you are walking through a park, psychological time is thinking about your emails. Presence is feeling the air on your skin and the ground beneath your feet. Now we move to the next point, which delves into the pain body and how our accumulated emotional pain keeps us trapped in unconscious patterns. Every human being carries around a reservoir of old emotional pain. The book calls this the pain body. It's an accumulation of every hurt, disappointment, and trauma you've experienced since childhood, and even pain that is inherited from the collective human experience. This pain body isn't just a memory, it's an energy field that lives within you. Most of the time it is dormant, but it can be triggered at any moment by a comment from a partner, a stressful situation at work, or even just a negative thought. When the pain body is triggered, it wants to survive, and it survives by feeding on your energy. Specifically, it feeds on negative thinking and emotional drama. This is why, when you're in a bad mood, you often find yourself looking for things to be upset about. You might pick a fight with a loved one or dwell on a past grievance. In those moments, you are no longer in control. The pain body has taken over your consciousness. It wants you to stay miserable because your misery is its food. The key to dissolving the pain body is not to fight it or try to push it away. If you resist it, you only give it more power. Instead, the book suggests conscious presence. When you feel that familiar heaviness or anger rising up, you simply observe it. You name it. You say to yourself, "This is the pain body." By becoming the observer, you break the identification with the pain. You realize that while the pain is in you, it is not you. This simple act of witnessing prevents the pain body from turning into your thought process. When the light of your consciousness shines on the pain, it can no longer operate in the shadows. Over time, the pain body loses its charge and eventually begins to dissolve, leaving behind a deep sense of stillness. Now we move to the next point, where we examine the transformative power of surrender and how accepting the present moment changes our relationship with life. Surrender is often mistaken for weakness or a passive resignation to a bad situation. However, the book describes it as a profoundly active and courageous state of being. Surrender doesn't mean you don't take action to change a situation. It means you accept the isness of the moment before you act. Resistance is the mental-emotional opposition to what is. It's the shouldn't be or the I don't want this. This resistance creates a layer of suffering on top of whatever the situation actually is. If you find yourself stuck in the mud, surrender isn't saying, "Well, I guess I'll just stay in the mud forever." Surrender is acknowledging, "Okay, I am in the mud." By accepting the reality of the situation without a mental labels of bad or unfair, you free up the energy you were using for complaining and resisting. Now, that energy can be used for clear-headed action. You can look for a way out of the mud without the added weight of emotional distress. The book argues that surrender is the ultimate inner transition. It's about dropping the internal war against the present. When you surrender, you align your will with the flow of life. This creates a state of grace where things often seem to resolve themselves or the right action becomes obvious. It is the end of the ego's struggle to control everything and the beginning of living from a place of deep peace. Continuing from where we left off, we have explored how the mind and time create a barrier to our true nature and how surrender allows us to break through that resistance. Now we move to the next point, which focuses on the inner body and how connecting with your physical sensation of life is one of the most effective ways to anchor yourself in the present moment. Most of us treat our bodies as just a vehicle to carry our heads around. We see the body as a physical object made of flesh and bone, but the book suggests there is a much deeper dimension to your physical self. Beneath the outer form of the body lies an invisible, internal energy field, a literal feeling of being alive. This is what the author calls the inner body. When you are caught in a storm of thinking or a wave of anxiety, your energy is concentrated in your head. You are literally stuck in your mind. To get out of your mind, you must go into your body. Connecting with the inner body is a simple but profound practice. It involves taking your attention away from your thoughts and directing it into your hands, your feet, your chest, and your abdomen. It's about feeling the life force that animates you. You might feel it as a slight tingling, a sense of warmth, or just a quiet heaviness. The importance of this cannot be overstated. When your attention is rooted in your body, you are naturally present. You cannot be in your body and in the past or future at the same time. This inner body acts as a permanent anchor. By staying connected to this inner energy, you also create a buffer between yourself and the outside world. If someone is rude to you or a situation becomes stressful, having a portion of your attention inside your body prevents you from being completely pulled away by the drama. You remain grounded. It is as if you have a deep, still ocean inside of you. Even if the waves on the surface are choppy, the depths remain calm. A short example of this is simply closing your eyes for a moment during a busy workday and feeling the life in your hands. That 10-second connection can be enough to break the cycle of stress and bring you back to the now. Now we move to the next point, which looks at the concept of the unmanifested and the various portals through which we can access a deeper state of reality. The book introduces a fascinating idea that the physical world we see, touch, and hear, the manifested world, is only a tiny fraction of what actually exists. Beyond this world of form lies the unmanifested, which is the source of all life, the formless essence of the universe. This isn't meant to be a religious concept, but rather a description of the stillness and silence that precedes all creation. We often feel disconnected or empty because we are only focused on the world of forms, things, and events. To find true peace, we need to find the portals that lead back to the unmanifested. One of the most accessible portals is silence. We usually think of silence as the absence of sound, but the book suggests we should look at it differently. Silence is the space in which sound exists. Without silence, sound could not be heard. When you listen to the silence underneath the noise of the world, you are actually connecting with the unmanifested. Another portal is space. Just as sound needs silence, physical objects need space to exist. If you look at the nothingness between objects in a room, or the vastness of the sky at night, you are looking at space. By bringing your attention to the gaps, the silence between words or the space between thoughts, you enter a state of high alertness. In those gaps, the mind stops its constant labeling and judging. You aren't thinking about the silence, you are simply aware of it. This awareness is a direct link to the source of your own being. It reminds us that we are not just the content of our lives, the events and things, but the container in which our lives happen. When you realize you are the container, the vast, empty space of consciousness, the problems within that container begin to lose their power over you. Now we move to the next point, where we examine how these principles of presence and the now completely transform our relationships and how we interact with others. Most human relationships, according to the book, are actually egoic relationships. They are based on need, projection, and the desire for the other person to fulfill some void within us. This is why so many relationships fluctuate between love and hate. One moment, your partner is the source of your happiness. The next, because they didn't act the way you wanted, they become the source of your pain. This isn't true love, it's an addictive grasping. The ego uses the other person to bolster its own sense of self. When you bring presence into a relationship, the dynamic changes entirely. Instead of looking to the other person to complete you or make you happy, you come to the relationship already rooted in the peace of the now. You no longer need the other person to be a certain way for you to be okay. This allows you to see the other person as they truly are, rather than through the lens of your own judgments and expectations. In a conscious relationship, the focus is on shared presence. If your partner is acting from their ego or their pain body, you don't react with your own ego. Instead, you hold the space of presence for them. You listen without judging. You witness their pain without being drawn into it. This non-reaction is incredibly powerful. It doesn't mean you allow yourself to be mistreated, but it means you address the behavior from a place of stillness rather than from a place of defensive anger. By being present, you offer the other person a mirror of their own deeper consciousness, which is the greatest gift you can give in any relationship. For instance, if a friend is complaining about the same issue for the 10th time, instead of getting frustrated, you simply listen with your whole body, acknowledging their words without adding your own mental commentary. This presence often helps the other person calm down more than any advice ever could. Now we move to the next point, which addresses the nature of the good and the bad, and how to find a peace that goes beyond the dualities of happiness and unhappiness. In our everyday lives, we are constantly labeling things as good or bad. If things go our way, we are happy. If they don't, we are unhappy. This keeps us on a perpetual emotional roller coaster. The book argues that happiness is often dependent on external conditions, which are inherently unstable and fleeting. Because everything in the world of form is subject to change and decay, a happiness built on form will eventually turn into unhappiness. However, there is a state that lies beyond these opposites. It's what the author calls the peace of God or the inner purpose. This is a sense of well-being that doesn't depend on whether things are going well or badly in your life. It comes from the realization that, at the level of being, nothing can truly harm you and nothing can be added to you. You are already whole. When you stop labeling every event as good or bad, you experience a profound shift. This doesn't mean you become indifferent. You still prefer a comfortable life to a difficult one, and you still work to improve your situation. But you no longer require the situation to be a certain way for your inner peace to remain intact. You allow the isness of the moment to be. Even in the midst of a bad situation, like a loss or a failure, you can feel a deep, quiet underlying peace. This peace is the realization that the good and the bad are just passing ripples on the surface of an ocean that is always, at its depths, perfectly still. Continuing from where we left off, we have looked at how to find a peace that exists independently of our external circumstances, shifting our focus from the fluctuating good and bad to the steady undercurrent of being. Now we move to the next point, which addresses the root of our anxiety by examining the nature of fear and why it is the constant companion of the ego. If you look closely at your life, you'll find that almost all of your fears are psychological in nature. We aren't talking about the immediate physical fear you feel if a car swerves toward you. That is a healthy, instinctive response that helps you survive. We are talking about the underlying sense of unease, the what-ifs, and the vague dread about the future. The book explains that this kind of fear is a direct result of living in the mind and being identified with the ego. The ego, because it is a false self created by thoughts, feels incredibly vulnerable and insecure. It is always afraid of being diminished, being proven wrong, or simply ceasing to exist. This is why the ego is so defensive. It sees every differing opinion as a threat to its identity. Because the ego lives in the future, it is constantly projecting itself into what might happen and trying to find ways to secure itself. But because the future is a mental construct, the ego can never find true security there. The book teaches that the only way to dissolve this deep-seated fear is to realize that your true essence, your being, cannot be threatened. When you are present in the now, fear disappears because it cannot survive without the projection of time. In the present moment, there is usually no problem. There is only a situation to be dealt with or accepted. For example, you might be worried about losing your job next month, which creates a state of fear. But in the actual now, as you sit in your chair or walk down the street, you are safe. By bringing your attention back to the immediate reality of the present, you pull the plug on the ego's fear machine. Now we move to the next point, where we explore the common habit of waiting and how it serves as a subtle but powerful denial of life. Most of us spend a significant portion of our lives waiting. We wait for the weekend, we wait for a vacation, we wait for a better job, or we wait for our children to grow up so we can finally have some peace. The book identifies two types of waiting, small waiting and large waiting. Small waiting is the frustration you feel in a grocery store line or in traffic. Large waiting is the state of mind where you are waiting for some future event to bring you the fulfillment or the life you think you're missing. In both cases, waiting is a mental rejection of the present. It means you want the future and you don't want the now. This creates a permanent state of dissatisfaction. You are essentially saying that what you have and where you are right now is not good enough. This is a waiting room mentality that prevents you from actually living. The book suggests that whenever you find yourself waiting, you should immediately snap out of it. If you are in a line, simply be there. Feel the weight of your body, observe your breath, and look around without judging. If you are waiting for a better life, realize that your life is not in the future, it is here. By focusing on the small steps of the present, you actually move toward your goals more effectively than if you were constantly dreaming of the finish line. When you stop waiting, you stop being a victim of time. You begin to experience a sense of richness in every moment, regardless of whether you are stuck in a traffic jam or sitting on a beach. Now we move to the next point, which discusses the creative use of the mind and how to balance thinking with the power of stillness. It's important to clarify that the book isn't suggesting we should stop thinking altogether. Thinking is an essential tool for navigating the world. The goal is to be able to use your mind consciously rather than being used by it. The book describes the ideal state as a balance between thinking and stillness. Most people are in a state of compulsive thinking, where the mind is running 24/7 like a machine with a broken off switch. This leads to mental exhaustion and a loss of creativity. True creativity, the author explains, comes not from more thinking, but from stillness. If you look at great scientists, artists, or athletes, they often describe their best work as coming from a state of no mind or flow. This is a state where the mind is quiet and a deeper intelligence takes over. To access this, you must learn to incorporate moments of stillness into your daily life. Instead of constantly analyzing and planning, you learn to step back. You perform a task, and then you rest in the silence. This oscillation between thinking and being is what allows for true productivity. When you use your mind from a foundation of presence, your thoughts become sharper and more effective. You are no longer just recycling old memories or worries, you are tapping into a fresh, creative source. A short example of this is taking a single conscious breath before answering a difficult email. That brief moment of stillness allows you to respond from a place of clarity rather than a place of reactive stress. Now we move to the next point, which looks at the concept of enlightenment and why it is not a faraway goal, but a natural state that is available to everyone right now. Many people hear the word enlightenment and think of a monk sitting in a cave for 40 years, or some superhuman state that is impossible for ordinary people to achieve. But the book offers a very different definition. Enlightenment is simply the end of suffering. It is the state of at-one-ment with being. It is the realization that you are the consciousness behind the thoughts, the stillness behind the noise. The reason enlightenment feels so difficult to reach is that we are looking for it in the future. We think it's something we have to attain or achieve through a long process of time. But the book argues that because enlightenment is the realization of the now, time is actually the biggest obstacle to it. You cannot become enlightened, because becoming implies a future. You can only be enlightened, which implies the present. It is a shift in perspective. It's like searching for your glasses when they are already on your face. You don't need to go anywhere to find them, you just need to realize they are already there. In the same way, the peace and the presence you are seeking are already within you, obscured only by the clouds of your thoughts. Enlightenment is the simple act of stepping out of the shadows of the past and future and into the light of the present moment. It is the end of the search and the beginning of being. Now we move to the next point, where we explore the collective ego and how our personal presence contributes to the healing of the world. The book doesn't just focus on the individual, it also looks at the state of humanity as a whole. It suggests that most of the conflict, war, and environmental destruction in our world is a direct result of the collective ego. Just as individuals are driven by fear, greed, and a need for identity, so are nations, religions, and groups. When we identify strongly with a group, we often create an us versus them mentality, which is the ego's way of strengthening itself. This collective unconsciousness has caused unimaginable suffering throughout history. However, the book offers a hopeful perspective. It suggests that the evolution of consciousness is happening right now. As more individuals wake up and learn to live in the present, the collective ego begins to lose its grip. Your personal journey into presence is not a selfish act, it is your greatest contribution to the world. By becoming more conscious, you stop adding to the collective pain body. You stop reacting to others with anger and judgment, which prevents the cycle of violence from continuing. When you are present, you bring a different frequency into every room you enter. This stillness is contagious. It has a healing effect on those around you. The book suggests that we don't need to fix the world through more complex mental strategies. We need to heal the world by bringing the light of consciousness into our own lives first. Now we move to the next point, which discusses the profound role of the physical body as a doorway to the unmanifested and a tool for spiritual growth. While we touched on the inner body earlier, it is worth exploring how the physical body serves as a bridge between the world of form and the world of the formless. Many spiritual traditions have taught that the body is an obstacle to be overcome or a temple to be transcended. This book takes a different approach. It suggests that the body is actually a direct portal to being. The reason for this is that the body always lives in the now. Your mind can travel to 1,000 years ago or 100 years into the future, but your body is always right here, breathing and existing in the present. By deeply inhabiting your body, you ground your consciousness in reality. This prevents you from being swept away by the abstract world of the mind. The book encourages a practice of body awareness throughout the day. This isn't just about exercise or health, it's about feeling the life within your cells. When you are fully in your body, you are highly alert and yet deeply relaxed. This state of relaxed alertness is the foundation for all spiritual growth. It makes you more resilient to stress and more sensitive to the beauty of the world. Even in the face of physical illness or aging, the inner body remains untouched and vibrant. By focusing on the life inside the form, you begin to lose your fear of the death of the form itself. Most of us are completely consumed by our outer purpose. This is what we do in the world, our careers, our projects, our social status, and our long-term goals. Outer purpose is bound by time. It belongs to the realm of becoming. You are always trying to become something else, get somewhere else, or achieve a specific result. While there is nothing wrong with having an outer purpose, the book points out a fundamental truth: outer purpose is secondary. It is inherently unstable because it is subject to the laws of change and the uncertainty of the future. If you make your outer purpose your primary focus, you will always be under a cloud of stress and fear, because your sense of self-worth is tied to things you cannot fully control. Your inner purpose, on the other hand, has nothing to do with what you do. It has everything to do with how you do it. Your inner purpose is to be present. It is to stay in a state of conscious awareness regardless of what is happening on the outside. This purpose is not bound by time, it is always now. When you align yourself with your inner purpose, your outer purpose becomes infused with a different kind of quality. You are no longer acting out of a sense of lack or a need to prove yourself. Instead, your actions flow from a state of wholeness. If you are washing the dishes, your outer purpose is to get the dishes clean. Your inner purpose is to be fully present with the water, the soap, and the movement of your hands. If you are only focused on the clean dishes in the future, you are missing the life that is happening while you wash them. By prioritizing the how over the what, you find that your outer goals often take care of themselves with much less effort and strain. You realize that the journey is the only thing that is ever real, and the destination is just a mental idea. Now we move to the next point, where we dive into the state of no mind and how creating gaps in the stream of thought is the key to mental health and clarity. The book describes the average human mind as being in a state of compulsive thinking. This means that even when we aren't trying to solve a problem or learn something new, the mind is still spinning. It's like a motor that won't turn off, gradually wearing itself down. This constant stream of noise creates a barrier between us and the world around us. It labels everything, judges everything, and interprets everything through the lens of the past. To find true peace, we must learn to access the state of no mind. No mind is not a state of being spaced out or unconscious. On the contrary, it is a state of intense, vibrant alertness. It is a state where you are fully aware, but there is no voice in the head commenting on what you are seeing. You are simply the space in which life is unfolding. One of the simplest ways to practice this is by creating gaps in your thinking. Throughout the day, try to give your full attention to a routine activity that is usually just a means to an end. For example, every time you walk up and down the stairs, pay such close attention to every step, every movement, even your breathing, that there is no room for thought. These moments of no mind are like small windows of light in a dark room. They allow you to experience a sense of stillness that is much deeper than any mental satisfaction. In these gaps, you aren't doing anything, but you are more alive than ever. This is where true intelligence resides. When you return to thinking after a period of no mind, your thoughts are fresher, more creative, and more powerful. You begin to use your mind as a sharp tool when needed, rather than being a victim of its constant, aimless chatter. Now we move to the next point, which discusses the transformation of suffering and how even the most difficult experiences can be used as a fuel for consciousness. We all face challenges, loss, illness, failure, or emotional pain. The ego's natural reaction to these things is resistance. We think, this shouldn't be happening, or why me? This resistance, as we've discussed, creates a secondary layer of suffering that is often worse than the original event. However, the book teaches that suffering can actually be a forced portal into presence. When a situation is so painful that you can no longer run away from it or ignore it, you are faced with a choice. You can either succumb to the pain and become completely unconscious, or you can use it to wake up. This is the process of transmutation. It involves taking the lead of your suffering and turning it into the gold of consciousness. How do you do this? By surrendering completely to the feeling of the pain. Instead of trying to think your way out of it or labeling it as bad, you bring your full attention to the physical sensation of the suffering in your body. You feel the tightness in your chest, the knot in your stomach, or the heaviness in your heart. You allow the pain to be there without any mental commentary. By doing this, you are effectively shining the light of consciousness onto the pain. You are staying present with the isness of the suffering. When you stop resisting, the suffering can no longer feed on your energy. It begins to lose its heavy, personal quality. You realize that while there is pain in your life, you are the vast, spacious awareness in which the pain is occurring. This doesn't necessarily make the external situation disappear immediately, but it removes the stinger of psychological misery. It allows you to face the difficulty with a quiet, inner strength that the ego can never possess. Now we move to the next point, which explores the nature of compassion and how presence allows us to connect with others on a level that goes far beyond personality. In our usual state of consciousness, we relate to people through their form. We see their physical appearance, their social status, their opinions, and their past behaviors. We are relating from one ego to another. This level of relationship is always fraught with judgment, comparison, and hidden agendas. True compassion, however, arises only when you are present. When you are present, you are able to see past the form of the other person and recognize the same light of consciousness that lives within them as lives within you. Compassion is the realization that the other is not really an other at all. At the level of being, there is no separation. When you look at someone who is suffering, or even someone who is acting out of anger or unconsciousness, presence allows you to see the pain body or the ego at work in them. Because you have recognized these things in yourself, you don't take their behavior personally. You don't react with your own ego, which would only strengthen their unconsciousness. Instead, you offer them the space of your presence. This is the highest form of help you can give. To truly listen to someone with your whole being, without judging or preparing your next response, is a rare and healing act. It allows the other person to feel seen at a level that is deeper than their problems or their personality. This doesn't mean you become a doormat. You can still say no or walk away from a toxic situation. But you do so without the poison of hatred or resentment. Your actions are clear and firm, yet they come from a place of peace rather than a place of conflict. Now we move to the next point, where we examine the illusion of the past and how our attachment to our personal history often prevents us from experiencing the freedom of the now. We all have a story. We have our childhood memories, our past successes, our traumas, and the narrative of how we became who we are today. The ego loves this story because it provides a sense of identity. It gives us a name, a role, and a place in the world. However, the book warns that if we aren't careful, we become lost in our story. We begin to believe that our past is who we are. The truth is that the past has no power over the present moment unless you give it power through your thoughts. Your history is just a collection of mental images and concepts. It is dead energy. When you constantly dwell on what happened to you, or what you did, you are dragging that dead energy into the living present. This is why many people feel heavy or stuck. They are carrying the weight of 20 or 30 years of history in their minds. Presence is the act of dropping the story. It's the realization that who you are right now is not defined by what happened 10 years ago or even 10 minutes ago. You are the presence that exists before the story begins. This doesn't mean you forget the past or ignore its practical lessons. It means you no longer look to the past for your sense of self. You realize that your true identity is not a character in a story, but the consciousness in which the story is told. When you let go of the need to be someone based on your history, you experience a lightness and a freedom that allows you to respond to life with total spontaneity. Now we move to the next point, which discusses the silence of the mind and how the practice of waiting without expectations can lead to deep spiritual insights. We often think that to find answers or to grow spiritually, we need to do more, learn more, or think more. But the book suggests that the most profound insights often come from a state of waiting. This isn't the frustrated, egoic waiting we talked about earlier. This is a conscious waiting, like a cat waiting for a mouse to emerge from a hole. You are intensely alert, fully present, but you aren't looking for anything in particular. In this state of waiting, you aren't filling the space with your own mental noise. You are simply open. This is how we access the unmanifested or the source. When your mind is completely quiet and you aren't demanding an answer from the universe, something deeper can emerge. It might come as a sudden realization, a feeling of deep peace, or a creative solution to a problem you've been struggling with. This practice is about trusting the stillness. Most of us are afraid of silence because it makes the ego feel small and irrelevant. We feel like we should be doing something or thinking about something. But it is only in the silence that we can hear the still, small voice of our own being. By practicing these moments of alert waiting, even just for a minute or two while you sit in your car or wait for a kettle to boil, you are training yourself to stay present in the gap. You are learning that you don't need the mind to tell you who you are or what to do. There is a deeper intelligence that is always available to guide you. As we bring this exploration of the power of now to its close, it is helpful to take a moment and let the weight of these ideas settle. We have traveled through a landscape that challenges almost every conventional way we have been taught to think about our lives, our identities, and our problems. We've looked at the intricate machinery of the mind, how it creates a false sense of self to survive, how it tethers us to a past that no longer exists, and how it keeps us chasing a future that is forever out of reach. We have seen that the very thing we often rely on most, our analytical, thinking mind, is frequently the very wall that stands between us and the peace we crave. The journey Eckhart Tolle describes is ultimately a return to the simple, naked reality of being alive. If there is one singular takeaway from this entire teaching, it is that your life is never out there. It isn't in your bank account, your career, your social standing, or even your physical health. Those are the conditions of your life. Your life itself is the deep, underlying presence of consciousness that is occurring right here, in this breath, in this heartbeat. When we lose touch with that presence, we become lost in the drama of our circumstances. We become victims of the small self that is always wanting, always fearing, and always judging. One of the most profound shifts we've discussed is the move from resistance to surrender. Throughout our lives, we are often taught that struggle is necessary, that we must fight against the world to get what we want. But the book offers a different path, the path of non-resistance. This isn't a call to be passive or to let others walk over you. It is a call to accept the isness of this moment. When you stop arguing with reality, you stop leaking your vital energy into useless emotional reactions. You become more effective, more focused, and infinitely more peaceful. You realize that you don't need to control everything to be safe. True safety comes from knowing that your deepest self, your being, is untouchable by the changing winds of the world. We also looked at the concept of the pain body, that heavy cloud of old emotional energy that so many of us carry. Understanding the pain body changes how we view our own emotional outbursts and the behaviors of others. Instead of seeing ourselves as broken or bad when we feel anger or sadness, we can see it as an old pattern that is simply seeking to feed itself. By bringing the light of conscious presence to that pain, we take away its power. This is the ultimate form of self-healing. It doesn't require years of analysis or reliving the past. It requires only the courage to stay present with the feeling of the pain in the now. This transformation also extends into our relationships. We've seen how most relationships are a struggle between two egos, each trying to get its needs met through the other. By bringing presence into our interactions, we stop the cycle of projection and blame. We learn to listen with our whole being and to see the person in front of us without the filter of our own past grievances. This conscious relationship becomes a shared spiritual practice where two people help each other stay awake to the truth of their being. The book also reminds us that our bodies are more than just physical shells. They are portals to the unmanifested. By staying rooted in the inner body, we find a permanent anchor in the midst of life's storms. We learn that we can be active in the world, achieving goals, and fulfilling our outer purpose, while remaining deeply connected to our inner purpose, which is simply to be present. This balance is the secret to a life that is both productive and peaceful. It is the end of the waiting game, the constant feeling that life is about to start once we get past the next hurdle. When you are present, life has already started. You have already arrived. In the final sections of the book, there is a beautiful discussion about the nature of time and how it serves as the ultimate illusion. We use clock time for the practicalities of our day, but we must learn to let go of psychological time. Psychological time is the burden of the me and my story. It is the belief that the past defines us or that the future can save us. When we drop psychological time, we enter the vertical dimension of life, a depth of experience that is not measured in minutes or hours, but in the quality of our awareness. This is what it means to be enlightened. It isn't a supernatural state, it is simply the natural state of being at one with life. As you step away from this summary and go back into your day, remember that these aren't just ideas to be understood intellectually. Presence is an experience. It is something you practice every time you notice your mind drifting into a worry about tomorrow and you gently pull it back to the sensation of the air moving in and out of your lungs. It is something you practice every time you feel a surge of irritation and you choose to observe the feeling rather than act on it. These small moments of presence are the building blocks of a transformed life. The world around us is often noisy, fast-paced, and filled with unconsciousness. It can be easy to get pulled back into the stream of compulsive thinking. But now you have the tools to step out of that stream. You have the realization that you are the observer of the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. You have the knowledge of the inner body and the portals of silence and space. And most importantly, you have the understanding that the now is always available to you. No matter what has happened in your past, and no matter what challenges you face in your future, the peace of the present moment is a refuge that never leaves you. The power of now is ultimately the power of you, the real you that exists beneath the labels, the roles, and the history. It is a power that doesn't need to dominate others, but a power that is rooted in a deep, immovable stillness. As you continue your journey, may you find more and more of those gaps in the mind, more and more moments of pure being, and a growing sense of the deep joy that comes from simply being alive. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. And that experience is only ever found right here, right now. Take a deep breath and feel the life in your body. Notice the sounds around you without naming them. Notice the space in the room you are in. You are here. You are present. And in this moment, everything is exactly as it needs to be. This is the end of the summary, but it is just the beginning of your practice. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope these insights from Eckhart Tolle serve as a steady guide for you as you navigate the complexities of your life with a new sense of presence and peace.